Hello, I'm Emmanuel Kenning, Content Editor of Insurance Age, and welcome to our new video and podcast series, Double Indemnity. On today's show, Mike shares insight on his career, looks at the quality of people in the MGA space, and argues about the entrepreneurial side of underwriting, as well as giving his views on regulation. We hope that you find great value in the conversations and that you enjoy the series. On with the show.
Welcome to the Double Indemnity podcast. I'm Toby Clegg and it's my co-host Stuart Reid. And today we are talking to the legend that is the CEO of the MGAA, which is Mike Keating.
Great to be here, gentlemen. Thanks very much for the invitation.
So Mike, well known in the industry. Looking at your career, I was catching up on LinkedIn just the other day. You've had many different jobs. The one I know you best from is AXA, I think, where we met. You've worked in the claims area, now you're in the MGA. A lot of it, I think, had some sort of involvement with MGAs with all the other roles that you've had, is that right?
Yeah.
And you're now heading up the MGAA.
Yep.
Could you just explain what your role is there? You're CEO, obviously.
Thanks, Stu. So timing is quite interesting for this podcast. So I've now completed 5 years at the MGAA as the COO. So 5 years tenure. We are a not-for-profit trade association serving the needs of the UK and Republic of Ireland MGA sector. My role as CEO is actually not least to run the very able executive team, but to clearly act as the right ambassador for the MGA sector and all of our members. And as of today, we have over 450 members across our 3 tiers. We have close to 260 MGA members who underwrite in excess of £18 billion of premium income. We have 70 insurer members who are keen to deploy capital to MGAs, and we have over 150 valued supplier members who provide products and services to MGAs or insurers, or actually both. And sometimes we have supplier members who provide products and services to insurers, MGAs and other suppliers. So what a great place to be. So if I may, if I look, I always describe what we do is across 3 pillars really. So first and foremost, we have our sort of networking and events, and you gentlemen would have been to our flagship conference, which is in July, and this year we had over 1,250 delegates. So that just shows the strength of the sector. And we put on broker events to engage with our sort of MGA members. We have a capacity exchange in a couple of weeks' time where our insurer members exhibit and meet our MGA members. So we have a full program of networking and events, which is important for our members to meet each other and share sort of details around their business. Our second pillar is something I'm very proud of and something we've invested heavily in, which is what we call our program of learning and insights. And that's all around, basically the genesis of that is to be relentlessly looking to improve the knowledge, professionalism, integrity across the whole sector. So we have a whole range of sort of masterclass webinars which we sort of do live, but also are available on our YouTube channel. And these cover things such as technical underwriting, technical claims, operational excellence. We have a Connect to Lloyd's. We have one for personal line members. We have a compliance one, which won't surprise you, gentlemen, is always heavily sort of attended. So that's the second pillar and something we'll continue to invest in. And the third thing, just as importantly, is something which I actually lead on, is that we lobby on behalf of our members for things which may impact their business, both positively and negatively. And as you'd expect, we have excellent relationships with the regulator, and quite rightly we have excellent relationships with our sort of peer associations. So Graham is a good friend of mine at BIBA. We do a lot of work with BIBA, Chris Cross at LIBA, Sheila at the LMA. So that's the third pillar, where we're ensuring that if our members have some challenges or need some introductions, then we as the association have those relative connections. So hopefully that gives you a picture portrait.
Very full answer, Mike, thank you. And what sort of percentage of the MGA population do you think you represent?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, and we may touch on that sort of in a different guise later. So, MGAs aren't regulated separately. Okay, they're formed within sort of the broker community. So our sort of reasonable good guess in terms of UK and Ireland is that there's somewhere between 350 and maybe 380 bona fide MGAs. And one of the key things when I say bona fide MGAs is that as an MGA association, we only accept MGA members whose fiduciary duty is to their capital and their carrier. We see that brokers who have delegated authority and binders, that they're, both you guys are brokers, so you would know that your fiduciary duty first and foremost is to your customer.
Absolutely.
So that is a real clear sort of, I want sort of friendly red line. And if you walk into any of our 250 plus sort of members, you know, the mood music for what, like say, they would come across as being small insurers effectively. All the narrative is around insurance company, you know, risk appetite, pricing, you know, oversight, governance. So they act very much as an agent of the carrier and the insurer. And I'm not saying brokers in terms of with delegated authorities don't do similar, but actually, you know, they're, you know, where the line or the barometer is, in my view, that, you know, it's all around their end customer, where an MGA has to be an insurer.
I'm gonna let Toby come in. Just one last.
Oh, you go
quick
for it.
one.
Yeah.
This is MGA time, isn't it? I mean, it's champagne corks being popped everywhere. I mean,
Or is that just us?
but it is a great time. I call it the sort of the rise and rise of the MGAs. They used to be a want to have. Now they're sort of a have to have. The service levels from insurers, the specialist cover that you can get, they're very much the thing to do. Is that fair?
It's very true. So the sector is extremely buoyant, and that's both UK, Europe, and internationally. You know, we've got, as you'd expect, we've got good relationships with, you know, target markets and WISA in the States, with the UAC in Australia and CAMA in Canada. So we know what's happening internationally, and there was an inaugural European MGA conference in Amsterdam in June this year, which I attended, which it was quite fun. It was slightly outside of the city centre, unfortunately, which I think was the most #1 feedback to the organisers for reasons I don't understand. But you know, we'll pass on that from that perspective. But yes, it's very buoyant. I think there are more MGAs being set up than there are brokers, which I think is a concern for end customers.
That's an amazing stat.
Yeah, but that is the case. But at the same time, where the sector is buoyant, you know, the air of caution I would note is that we are entering a weakening rate environment.
Yep.
Sins of the past, not just for MGAs in terms of the sector, and I wouldn't exclude carriers for this, is that the MGA sector in the past has looked to grow try to grow in a weakening rate environment, and no one can win on that.
Yeah.
Right? And part of that in the past has been for MGAs having to meet their fixed cost base. And we all know in the fixed cost base you've got salaries, premises and IT effectively, I think, you know, outside of that. But I think there is a real muscle memory within MGAs now that, and obviously certainly since COVID, there's a greater flex in their operational expenses where that they can look to navigate their way through where there is a sort of weakening rate environment. Because we all know, you know, the basics are there's less premium, therefore if you're commission based there's less commission, but the likelihood for claims frequency and average claims cost going down at the same rate is probably not going to be the case, because there's still claims inflation across most
that's
product
the
lines
enigma,
from that
isn't it?
bit.
Yeah.
And claims frequency will actually slightly increase normally in a softening market, because that tends to come from an economic background, and we all know that fraud increases in that thing, in where the economic sort of background. So that's an air of caution, but I'm extremely confident in terms of that the sector will navigate that. And the one sort of point I would like to sort of emphasise as the opportunity is that when I speak to all of our insurer members, which I do, and you know that's close to 70, all of them to an individual and an individual organisation share that they've never seen the competency and expertise demonstrated in the underwriting of MGAs as it is now, they've never seen before. Now, part of that is because there's been a transition from the company market into MGA, so we've got very, very good people. But I think that's a great endorsement of the MGA sector, because they are built on absolute incredible underwriting expertise.
It's fascinating, Toby. It's a fascinating sector, and so important.
Well, if you're an ambitious young person and you're, let's say, stuck in a kind of insurer environment, which is the old supertanker analogy, as you always say, the entrepreneurial side of underwriting is now MGAs, isn't it?
Correct.
And when you look at it, I mean, we were talking very briefly before, there are no new insurance companies being set up, because quite obviously, with the bonfire of regulations under Labour and everything else they're looking at, it's all very squarely focused on FOS, on the FCA and others. It doesn't seem to have touched the door of the PRA yet. So I can't imagine we're going to see a flurry of new licensing being issued. And so if that's the case, the MGAs become all the more important, because if you're going to be the conduit to capacity and underwriting, it's going to be those guys that do it, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually it's a good point, Toby, because you see, I mentioned sort of the international flavour we have as an association, and if you look in UK, Ireland, Europe and say internationally, what you see is that entrepreneurial approach, that individuals see, number one, the opportunity that within an MGA environment they can actually display and use their skills, which they've been trained for.
And a bit of flair.
Correct,
yeah.
Number one. And also they feel they can add value both personally and also for the business as well. Yeah. So, it's not, this podcast, Double Indemnity, is not here to criticise our great insurer friends, but the fact of the matter is...
Love them all.
We love them all. The fact of the matter is the sector, the MGA sector is exciting, it's innovative, it's speed to market, it's cause and effect, it has the right regulation and oversight and governance, but the ability to move and do things quickly is far more prevalent in the MGA sector.
True, and I think it's fair to say that you've driven a lot of that. I mean, I think if anyone was going to have a lucky career, it was when you joined the MGAA at a time when there were a lot of MGAs.
It was pretty unlucky before then, let me tell you.
I mean, you caught the spring tide. You literally got a huge influx of new members. It seems to be the growing part of the industry. It's a really exciting part. But you have done the whole... I mean, you were ultimately... In fact, it's fair to say probably Mike is the ultimate broker, because you are the middleman between insurers, obviously brokers and everyone else. And actually... and the regulators and everyone else. You are actually pretty much the broker, the broker's broker.
Mike, if I may, let me answer that for you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You're not pitching for his job.
I wasn't quite clear whether he was insulting me there or whether he was giving me a compliment.
You'll find it's a bit of both. But it's not just that. I think you're a round peg and a round hole in that. You've got the biggest black book in the market. You know everybody in the market. One of the things
including
the reprobates. But that people side of things is so important. One of the things that you mentioned, but I think is so valuable, and I underestimated how much you do, is that interaction, say, with the regulator or whomever it is, putting out those fires before they get a little bit too hot. And presumably that people aspect to your job, that interaction with people that you've known for a long period of time, etc., is that the most enjoyable part of what you do?
It is, and it's a good point, Stu, because we have MGAs, we have insurers, and we have suppliers. And if you could see, walk a day in my shoes, and again, I also want to emphasise I have a fantastic executive team who actually allow me to actually do this. Yeah. But in a day in my shoes, I could be having a great conversation with an MGA member around their business plans, what they're doing, and just bouncing ideas in terms of I can help. Later on that morning, I could be talking to an insurer who could be talking about their risk appetite and where their growth plans are, and where maybe they've got some challenges, and where they could help, perhaps in terms of sharing with our membership some new initiatives they're looking to do. And then thirdly, in the afternoon, I could be talking to a supplier who actually producing a new bit of tech, which is going to sort of revolutionise what insurers and MGAs can do. So it's a great environment to work in. And what's important for me and my team is the fact that for all of those individual member tiers, that we are relentlessly providing value now, and also looking at what we can provide for them in the future to ensure that they continue to see the value of the association. Yeah. So it's but underpinning all that, and you guys have known me for a long time, so certainly you have, Stu, underpinning that, and it's a cliche, is that you know, the insurance industry is just all about relationships.
It is,
and, at the end of the
amazing. There's people to people. One thing we haven't talked about is the value of MGAs. I don't mean to underwriters, to capacity providers or whatever, but the actual price for an MGA.
But it's interesting that actually, just to focus on that as well, because you mentioned it briefly earlier, which was that obviously the fiduciary duty is different to a broker. A lot of brokers own MGAs, but they're real value adders because obviously they are the direct route to capacity. But what's interesting is that regulation piece. Just very briefly looking at that. I mean, I've got a relationship obviously with Guernsey and with the Guernsey Financial Services Authority, who actually have commission, I should say, who have the separate MGA licensing regime, which is interesting because they've got the distinct insurer, MGA, broker, whereas the MGA ones just fall under the intermediary general license. Do you think that will ever change, or do you think that will I mean, it's a well-trodden path. Obviously, they're well represented by you, so there's no need to change it. But with the captive regime having come in and other things, do you hear any drumbeats that they're going to do that?
Yeah, it's interesting, the timing sort of, you know, I had the opportunity yesterday to have an introductory call with Graham Reynolds at the FCA, who's the interim director of insurance following sort of Matt Brewer's movement. And we touched upon this actually, and I think the first thing I would say that there is movement within our membership that MGAs, because of the buoyancy of the sector, which Stu sort of alluded to, that, well, shouldn't actually it be sort of, you know, separated out of brokers and whatever. You know, the challenges I've sort of, or the sort of observations I've said to members and publicly is one, sort of half tongue-in-cheek, be careful what you wish for. Right, number one. But secondly, first of all, you've got to look at the bandwidth of the regulator. Okay, so the bandwidth of the regulator, I think they've got, these numbers are pretty close, will be maybe 110, 120 people, and 8,000
which people find fascinating. It
is
is only 100 people.
And 8,000 firms to regulate, okay? And I touched on this with Graham, and he said, you know, one of the challenges is that when you lift a particular sort of, you know, collection of MGAs out, there's an awful lot you have to do to identify them, and there's a lot of things. And one of those, which we touched upon earlier, is the fact that, you know, who's going to then actually analyse and say, is this an MGA as defined by the regulator, or is it a broker with a binder?
So, especially a Lloyd's broker.
But what I would say to you gentlemen, and you know, when it goes out to the listeners, is that, and I'll repeat this, that when we had a Lloyd's Library open mic session with Matt Brewers this year, and this was raised from the audience, which is great, and Matt made it very, very clear. And there was a great collaborative challenge, which Graham again has underlined yesterday, that if there are elements of the FCA rulebook which are clearly not relevant to MGAs and are more relevant to the broker community, then they were quite open for those examples to come to me, and for me, on behalf of the MGA sector and our members, to say to the regulator, look, can you just dispensate MGAs out of this? And they said,
there's been a bit of noise around this, hasn't there? Sorry to interrupt, but there's been a little bit of noise around this, whether you should have special regulation or different regulation, etc.
You could be more controversial. Aaron Banks is pointing about getting rid of the FCA, right? If you were to look, hear me out on this, as crazy as that sounds, sorry Aaron if you're listening, but as crazy as that sounds, the point being is, surely then the professional bodies like Corporation of Lloyd's, for instance, that BIBA and yourselves would then have to step in and play quite a significant role as a de facto issuer of standards and an overseer. I mean, that could be quite a, I mean, it's a bold thing. I suppose you have to put on the risk register of somewhere, don't we?
It didn't. You're not looking for that, are you, Mike?
No, it was a great.
That would be a headline.
It was a great comment by Aaron, and again, but you know, you think of, you know, what the regulator does great in protecting vulnerable customers and everything. It's out there at the end of the day.
Can I come back to the value though? You know, obviously being historically entrepreneurial, it is fascinating that if you're looking at selling the MGA, and I'm sure buyers out there will disagree, but the multiples for an MGA are now not that far short of what you would pay for a broking business.
Correct.
That's a sharp increase in value over a period of time.
Is this a penny drop moment for you? You're going to step one up and...
No. But
to be fair, Stu, it won't surprise you. So the greater the specialism, the greater the multiples.
Well, that's always a foundation point, isn't it? That specialism wins. You know, a vanilla type MGA has little interest, I guess, value-wise. But those value discussions presumably revolve around not just an EBITDA or whatever it might be, but also the claims ratios with the various capacity providers. Yeah. So it's a much more technical purchase in some cases than others.
And tenure of capacity. Again, so you wouldn't want to buy an MGA and then the capacity sort of walks away.
I've had a few of those.
Walks away in the last 12 months. Yeah, so you know, you've bought and sold brokerage, both of you, so you understand that. You know, and I would, not being controversial, I would say the due diligence required on an MGA around its underwriting performance, both going forward but also retrospectively, is important. Tenure of capacity is very, very important. Longevity of the underwriting team, products, data. So it is a completely different due diligence process for an MGA than it is on brokers. And I think you can see that from a market perspective, that whilst brokers are still being purchased, you know, announced today, wasn't it, that three more by JMG, that there's not that same speed of MGA M&A acquisition, and I believe part of that, not totally part of that, is down to the due diligence around the underwriting performance.
Yeah, but I mean the main acquisition benefit, one of the most important acquisition benefits used to be arbitrage, didn't it? You had a big business buying a small business, and you got these commissions, and you just got arbitrage on the commissions. But now I think that's become more sophisticated. And if you are buying a business with an MGA, or you are buying an MGA, it can be the arbitrage of that specialty underwriting more business for the bigger acquirer.
Correct.
And that is where the arbitrage is, which is a fascinating concept. We've come a long way to get to that. We're old enough to remember when MGAs were the worst thing possible. You know, insurance, you know,
last resort.
How dare you? Yeah. So it's fascinating how things have developed.
I think you've had a large role to play in that, of professionalism.
Can I just pause you there? Is this a compliment or an insult?
I've seen the MGAA, you've seen it as well, just go up and up in the estimation of everyone from regulators. Everyone. It's a really good time, actually, because it's similar to Graham at Bieber. We've actually got really good interaction with the FCA and stuff, and obviously sit on some of their panels and things as well. And it feels like a bit of a, I'm not going to say golden age, because obviously leaves space for improvement always, but we're certainly moving into a night.
Don't forget, Toby, the golden age of England footballers never won a thing. So
that's true. That's true.
It does beg the question: you haven't set up your own MGA, Mike.
Well, now he's been talking about value, we might. You could call it Double Indemnity. The pair you could set one up together. There you go.
I'll pass on that question.
I wonder what the speciality would be.
Oh, I dread to think.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, we should talk about some personal stuff. I mean, one thing we've got to touch upon, because it's just too odd. I mean, your accent betrays you. Like, how the hell did you end up as a Man U fan?
That was a grandfather, actually.
Oh, was it?
My grandfather was, but he was born in Jarrow, so that even makes it more complicated.
Right,
given that he wasn't from Manchester. But
I know where Jarrow is.
I'm very proud to say that at my age, I went through all of the Dave Sexton, Tommy Docherty when we got relegated, all the way through to the glorious Ferguson years. My one regret. Not say regret.
Still being a fan now?
I remember actually, which is quite an interesting story, and Stu will laugh at this. So when United played Chelsea in Moscow,
I was there.
I went with a good friend of mine, Tim Smith, who's doing great stuff at Bespoke, and we flew out to Moscow on a black aeroplane from a gate which I don't think really existed in Gatwick, something like gate Z561Z or whatever. So it was a black aeroplane. But what was interesting, to shorten the story, is that we landed in Moscow when we got there, and all of a sudden we were just bumping into Stu in some bar. So how can you fly that far and you're seeing people from the London market?
It happens.
It happened. It was surreal from that bit. But so I'd
love to be the FSB to have the dirt on him from that week.
What was interesting?
The stories to tell.
Format, wasn't it? Was the
stories to tell.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have you ever been to Moscow? And I think me and Stu talked about it when we come back. Actually, is that when you got off at the airport and you went out, I think you had the Russian military. I think I'll get these colours wrong. I think they were in light green. Yeah. And then as you got close to the city, they went sort of like dark green, and then when you got into the city, it was black commando thing. So it was just got more serious as you got into Moscow.
It got a little bit frightening, didn't it? And I think the delay of 18 hours on the way back and no taxis, and it was heavily raining, really put a dampener on the loss to Man U.
But if you remember, again, just I know we're going off, but if you remember when you land at the airport, it was an aeroplane graveyard. It was so, if you were a plane buff. So the one I can remember was the old Freddie Laker plane was sort of stuck on the corner. So if you were an airplane buff, it was basically like a museum. It
is now, because half our planes are stuck over there.
I know.
Half your members are probably paying for it. So. Well, I am as a Lloyd's name. So.
and you're enjoying the role that you've got, Mike. You know, on a personal basis.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, you know, it's you know, we're still, you know, we still want to attract members. We are very focused on ensuring that the value of our 400 plus members, that they see, you know, continuous value, and that, you know, I think that the nuance, gentlemen, is around they want to be a member of the association. That's the key for me. And one of the things I've been asked previously is that, you know, what are your new member targets? And it's not being complacent or arrogant. We don't look at new member targets because, one, we want to ensure that we're providing excellent value both now and going forward to our existing sort of membership base. And actually part of that, if we're doing that, you know, and you've been very kind sort of today in some of your comments, other people should say, well, this sounds great, why don't we be a member? And we should be a member because of both reputation and what we do across the market. You know, we do quite rightly proactively, certainly the new MGAs, you know, we have an incubator membership for new MGAs, which is very popular. You know, we always reach out to them to try and help them. So that's
You'd be mad not to. I mean, I'm not just singing your praises and everything else, but I mean, it's just very much like an industry body is there to represent everyone.
Correct.
You see that demonstrable benefit where you sit with Bieber and other people and you go, well, actually, they're here kind of advocating on your behalf, right? Because you're doing the heavy work of talking to the regulators, they don't have to. And that engagement is hugely impressive. And also, I mean, I saw a Jamie Dimon, I can never pronounce his name, interview, and he just said, talk to everyone always. Go into your events and things, you're going to bump into people, get ideas, you're going to see what others are doing. I mean, you'd be mad not to be part of that. You'd have to be quite a singular person to not want to...
Well, I would always call you singular. We have to wind up now, lads.
Okay. But we got to ask one question, which we wanted to ask everyone, which was, if you have one controversial statement or something that you could leave us with, that you think people that just get their minds turning, what do you think?
I think at some point insurers will collapse their branch networks and deploy capital to MGAs as opposed to have real estate across the UK.
Ooh.
I agree.
One to watch?
One to watch.
Whoever first mover advantage, I would suggest.
Yeah, okay, you set the pigeons flying or whatever the praise is. The cat's running, whatever it is. Right, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming. We could have spoken for hours, couldn't we?
Really enjoyed it.
It's really, really important.
Thanks very much, and good luck with Double Indemnity podcast.
Thank you
very much. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.